Recoil, A Tale of Quantum Immortality by Josh Alfred and ChatGPT. Elijah hated mornings, but he loved routines. The clatter of the coffee grinder, the slow drip of his French press, the way the sunlight angled through the blinds just right around 7:22 a.m. These were things he could depend on. The world felt stable when it followed patterns. On Tuesday, it didn't. He left his apartment like always, travel mug in one hand, messenger bag slung across his shoulder, earbuds in, listening to some podcast he wouldn't remember later. It was spring, one of those mornings where the city air felt almost clean. Birds were out. People smiled without meaning it. He texted his friend Lauren that he'd be 5 minutes late. She replied with a thumbs-up emoji. He looked up. The bus was already there. A horn roared. Someone screamed. And in that sliver of awareness, before impact, he felt everything slow. The sound warped like a record melting under flame. His body went cold. His hand opened. The coffee mug fell, and then nothing. No pain. No darkness. No dream. He was back on the sidewalk. His thumb still hovered over the send button. The message to Lauren hadn't been delivered yet. The bus hadn't arrived. It was 30 feet down the street, just pulling up to the stop. Elijah blinked. He stepped back onto the curb, breath caught somewhere in his chest. The people walking past gave him odd looks, but no one screamed. There was no blood, no twisted metal, only a bus hissing to a stop and opening its doors. He looked down. His coffee mug was still in his hand. Steam rose from the lid. The same podcast buzzed in his ears. What the hell just happened? Elijah didn't tell anyone. What would he even say? That he was almost hit by a bus that didn't hit him? That he jumped timelines like a Netflix glitch? He replayed it in his head all day at work, barely listening during meetings, nodding through conversations he didn't remember having. The strange part wasn't the near miss. It was how sure he was that he had died. That moment before impact wasn't fear. It was finality. His body had known it. And yet here he was, alive, wearing the same coffee-stained shirt, pretending everything was fine. He scrolled through news reports that night. Nothing about a bus accident. No traffic alerts. No mention of a pedestrian nearly being killed. He searched his phone history. The message to Lauren was still unsent. It never happened. Or it did. And now it didn't. The second time was worse. It happened 3 days later, on a windy Friday afternoon. Elijah had taken a shortcut through a construction zone behind his office, weaving between temporary fencing and stacks of rebar. The sky had turned a slate gray, spitting drizzle. He walked quickly, hunched forward, watching the sidewalk. He heard the sound first, a metallic creak overhead. Then a sharp shout from someone he couldn't see. He looked up. A steel beam was falling. No time to run, no time to think. Just a flash of silver, and the crushing weight of inevitability. He didn't scream. He woke up mid-step. Same sidewalk, same chill in the air, same drizzle. Except this time, the sky hadn't gone gray yet, and the beam hadn't fallen. It was still hoisted above by thick cables and rusted pulleys, 20 feet in the air. He staggered backward, breath ragged, pulse thundering. The same man, he couldn't see his face, shouted something above. A cable snapped. This time, Elijah ran. The beam crashed down behind him, shaking the ground. He didn't stop until he was half a block away, bent double, hands on his knees, dry heaving. That night, he didn't sleep. He sat in the dark of his studio apartment, surrounded by his plants and half-finished canvases, drinking tea that went cold in his hands. The city outside moved on like nothing had happened. But he knew. This wasn't coincidence. It wasn't luck. Something had changed. Something was breaking. Death wasn't following the rules anymore. Elijah became cautious after that. He avoided construction zones, stopped wearing earbuds in public, looked both ways twice before crossing any street. He told himself he was being smart, not paranoid. But the feeling lingered. Something was watching him from the margins of his own life, waiting. The third death came in silence. It was Sunday. Elijah had spent the morning painting, a half-finished skyline, now drying in streaks of midnight blue. He was cleaning up, hands speckled with color, when he smelled it. Gas. He froze, checked the stove. The burners were off. The dials too. But the smell was unmistakable, thick and sweet, like rotting apples. He grabbed his phone and turned toward the front door. That's when the window shattered. The explosion hit him before the sound did. A white wave of heat. Walls peeled inward like paper. His body lifted just for an instant, and then the world turned black. He gasped awake in bed, heart racing. Sunlight bled through unfamiliar curtains. He sat up. His sheets were different. The walls weren't his. His desk was covered in textbooks. The smell of microwave noodles drifted from somewhere nearby. He was in college. A knock on the door snapped his head around. "Dude, you up?" a voice called. "We've got lab in 30. Elijah stared. The voice was familiar, impossible. It was Jason, his freshman roommate, a guy he hadn't seen in nearly 10 years. Footsteps padded away. A door closed. Elijah got out of bed slowly, legs shaking. He moved to the mirror. The face that looked back at him was still his, but younger, hair longer, eyes clearer. His shoulder tattoo was gone, he whispered. "No." He pulled open the drawer next to his bed. Inside was a stack of old notebooks, a pack of gum, his student ID, 2015, 8 years ago. He dropped the ID like it burned him. For a while, Elijah stayed quiet. He went to class, ate bland cafeteria food, let Jason drag him to parties, where everything felt like deja vu soaked in cheap vodka. He didn't try to change much, didn't talk about the future. What was the point? He spent his nights journaling, just in case, writing down everything he remembered about the years ahead. People, places, disasters, inventions. But even his memory had gaps now. Names slipped, dates blurred, whole weeks fuzzed out at the edges. Still, he was alive, and he stayed alive for months, until he didn't. It happened on a Tuesday, October. The leaves on campus had gone amber. Elijah was crossing the quad, headphones around his neck, sipping from a vending machine coffee that tasted like burnt paper. He was tired, hadn't slept well in weeks, and his stomach felt off. A girl walked past, talking on speakerphone. He was just lying there. He looked totally fine, then just collapsed. Elijah frowned, distracted. He turned to watch her go. That's when his throat seized. He coughed, once, then again, harder. Something was wrong. He staggered to a bench and dropped his coffee. His vision tunneled. The sky flickered. He tried to breathe, but his lungs refused. A pressure built in his chest like a vice turning inward. People were around him now. Faces, voices. One of them shouted, "He's choking!" But he wasn't. He was dying. He woke up to the sound of his mom yelling, "Elijah, come on, you're going to miss the bus." He shot upright in bed. The room was alien and familiar all at once. Sports posters on the wall, a stack of video games by an old Xbox, glow-in-the-dark stars still clinging to the ceiling. His legs were tangled in a comforter, patterned with lightning bolts. His hands were smaller. He scrambled to the mirror, braces, acne, a mop of uncombed hair. He was maybe 15, maybe younger. The door burst open and his mom poked her head in, phone in one hand and a slice of toast in the other. "You good? You look pale." He stared at her. She was younger than he remembered. Not quite the woman who'd once cried outside his college dorm. Her voice didn't have that tired edge it carried later in life. Elijah swallowed. "Yeah, just a weird dream." She tossed him the toast, smiled, and left. He sat on the edge of his bed for a long time, listening to his own breathing. Shallow, uneven, still there. But for how long? It didn't take long. Just a few weeks of high school and death came again, quiet, uncaring. This time it wasn't dramatic. No bus, no beam, no explosion. It was pneumonia. The fever started on a Thursday. He figured it was the flu. By Friday, he couldn't get out of bed. On Saturday, he coughed blood. His mother took him to the ER, but it was too late. The doctors were silhouettes. Machines beeped like countdowns. As his vision faded, Elijah felt a terrible calm settle over him. He didn't even try to fight it. Then, light, warm, flickering. Orange like candlelight filtered through skin. He was floating? Sounds were muffled. Shapes loomed like giants. He heard voices, but they were warped and slow, like underwater music. Then, a woman's face, soft, crying, smiling. His mother, not as he remembered her, but younger. So young. Her hair was darker, her hands smoother. She held him like something priceless and breakable. "Hi, baby," she whispered. Elijah tried to speak. Nothing came. He couldn't move right. His limbs didn't answer. He looked down. Tiny hands, fingers the size of grapes. He was swaddled in blue. He tried to scream. Nothing but a gasp, a hiccup. Someone clapped. A nurse. They were congratulating her. He had been born. The world overwhelmed him. Cold air, blinding light, loud voices. Everything too big, too sharp, too fast. And in his tiny chest, something cracked open. Memory. Not all at once, not clearly, but pieces. Names without faces. Places without locations. A skyline of time folding in on itself. He remembered dying. He remembered living. And then, less. The knowledge drained like water down a sink, faster than he could hold it. Language faded, faces blurred, time dissolved. He cried, not from hunger, but from loss. Later in the nursery, the baby stared at the mobile, spinning slowly above him. Bright stars and crescent moons turned in lazy circles. A lullaby played. He blinked, once, twice, trying to remember something important. But all that remained was a flicker of fear. Then, nothing. Just a baby's sigh in a crib beneath a spinning sky. Epilogue. What is quantum immortality? Elijah's journey was not simply a series of deaths and resurrections. It was a fracture in the very fabric of his existence, a glitch in the quantum probabilities that govern life and death. Each time Elijah died, instead of ceasing to exist, his consciousness jumped to a parallel timeline where he had a chance to avoid that death. But this quantum leap was incomplete. The survival mechanism that should have reset him moments before his death instead rewound the clock further each time, pushing him backward through his own timeline, fragment by fragment. He wasn't just escaping death. He was trapped in an endless regression. His self, the sum of memories, experiences, and identity, remained constant and tethered. No matter how far back the clock turned, Elijah was always Elijah. The essence of who he was could not be erased or replaced, but the world around him and even his own body began to unravel as time reversed. His memories slipped away, his body shrank, and the present dissolved into the past. This is the paradox of quantum immortality twisted: survival at the cost of existence. Elijah's consciousness survived, but only by shedding the future and his own present, moving backward until he returned to the very beginning, his birth. There, his identity flickered on the edge of non-existence, a ghost trapped in time, destined to relive his life over and over, unable to break free, unable to truly live or die. His final fate is unknowable. Perhaps the loop will restart. Perhaps it will break. But until then, Elijah remains caught in time's recoil, a man endlessly running backward from death, yet forever defined by it.